The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host. And recently I got a phone call from a couple who are Orthodox and they cannot attend concealed carry classes on Saturday. So when this happens, I schedule a special class for the people that cannot attend on Saturday for day one, which will be during the week. And then they are invited to attend the second day, which is on a Sunday. I have such a situation coming up. So if you are interested in concealed carry, but you're unavailable on Saturdays, I believe we can accommodate you. For more information, please contact us via our electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. That is our electronic business card. It's one of the most efficient ways to get a hold of us. And the great thing about it is once you go to the website, there will be a little button that'll say add to contacts. So I can be your phone a friend. Once again, that's Marcus, Marcus. Last name is Melnick, Melnick.com. There's been a new product that's been introduced. It is the new Smith & Wesson 380 Bodyguard. So originally the Bodyguard was a version of a J-frame revolver with a shrouded hammer, and that model is still in production. It's a Smith & Wesson 638, and in 2010 they developed a teeny tiny little 380. I have a friend who has one. I have a couple of friends who have them, and one of them calls him his noisy cricket. So it is a small, I'll call it a pocket rocket or a pocket gun. And remember, when you are carrying a firearm in your pocket, A, nothing else should be in that pocket. B, it should be in a holster, whether it is a traditional pocket holster, a sticky holster. I prefer the Black Rhino Concealment TGH, which is a trigger guard holster. It is basically a piece of plastic with a lanyard that goes only around the trigger mechanism, or the trigger guard, I should say, and prevents anything from getting into the trigger to discharge the gun. The lanyard is designed to be wrapped around a belt loop or a belt. I never do that. I have it hanging loose, and it's just a two-handed deal. And it's going to be a problem if I ever get injured, but that's the way I do it. Because, quite honestly, I don't have a rear end, and with someone not having a rear end, you attach it to your belt, and guess what? You yank on it a little too hard, you loosen it up, and your pants fall down. And that's one way to get the criminal to die laughing as a joke. But the reality is, it is very difficult to maneuver when your pants are falling down. Just ask any gangbanger. So let me tell you about this Bodyguard 2.0. It resembles the M&P line, so it completely deviates from the original Bodyguard design, and it looks like a miniature version of a full-size M&P. It also has a safety trigger mechanism similar to the Glock, which is interesting. It appears to be striker fired, and it is a locked breech. It's polymer framed, micro compact, and it isn't 380 ACP. But those are the only similarities between the Bodyguard 1.0 and 2.0. Its profile, I'm reading this article and I'm summarizing it for everyone, but it matches the M&P 2.0 series with an ergonomic 18-degree grip angle and textured gripping surfaces with aggressive side serrations fore and aft. I would love it if gun manufacturers did not put slide serrations fore. I cannot tell you how many people I see attempt to rack that gun and their hands go right in front of that muzzle. And I happen to know one person who's a firearms instructor who did that, and blew off 2 of his fingers, because one of his fingers that wasn't blown off was on the trigger. So I always tell beginners that is for decoration. Use the rear serrations. Is there a purpose for it? Yes, but I would say it's more of a professional purpose where you're talking police officers, members of the military. So please, please, please be careful. So the original Bodyguard used a DAO, or double action only firing mechanism. The 2.0 is striker fired, and the design is taken from the M&P series. The trigger is flat faced. It's a performance center style trigger. And the striker mechanism allows for a lower slide height. It comes in 1/10 of an inch shorter than its predecessor, and overall is 1/4 of an inch longer than the original Bodyguard at 5.5 inches with the same 2.5-inch barrel. 2.75-inch barrel. Despite the dimensions, the capacity has been increased by 4 rounds. So the old Bodyguard only held 6+1. This new one holds 10+1. The magazine is flush fitting, and there is an extended 12-round magazine that comes with it. The pistol's weight has dropped to 9.8 ounces, super lightweight. And actually at RMG Guns last week, I had an opportunity to handle one. I didn't get to shoot it because it was a new gun, and they're very new as far as their rental program goes, so they did not have one in the rental program. However, it was kind of a neat little gun. Personally, for me, the size was just a little bit too small for being comfortable. But once again, your pocket gun should be comforting, not necessarily comfortable. I would love to get an opportunity to shoot it. If I go to, say, North Shore and they have one in the rental program, I rarely rent guns, but this is one of them that I think I might want to give a shot. Ha ha ha. So there's 2 versions, with a safety and without a safety, and it's bilateral, mounted on the rear of the frame for lefties and righties. The slide is stainless steel, and the barrel has a black armonite finish. Sights are bright dot front tritium insert and a rear U notch. That's going to be similar to the Hellcat. The 2.0 Bodyguard has an MSRP of $449 for both versions. TS means thumb safety, and TS means no thumb safety. So you can go on Smith & Wesson's website, which is smith-wesson.com, and you can see the advertisement there. It's talking about a perfect balance and a micro handgun. All the companies are going to say, oh, we have the perfect gun. And you know how long it takes for that to remain the perfect gun? Until the next gun they make. It's kind of the old joke that, what's your favorite gun? Well, my answer to that, because I avoid the question, is you just asked a fat guy if he likes cookies, cake, brownies, or ice cream. I like it all. And everyone's favorite gun is the last gun that they purchased. And that was kind of another joke, but true. So the gun actually was built from consumer insights, and it wanted to change the expectations around what's possible with a micro handgun. And Smith & Wesson is trying to set a new bar for shootability. There's great ergonomics, enhanced trigger, and they have been able to accomplish this while keeping the handgun small enough for deep concealment. So that's just one new product that's out on the market. Kind of exciting, another option for everyone. And we will be continuing after a message. Stay tuned.
I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress, the number 2, logic.com. That is STRESS, the number 2, LOGIC.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show.
Recently, I found something extremely interesting, and I love watching the presidential political information. I think it's very educational. I think it's very entertaining. And very recently, Vice President Harris picked her running mate, who is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Now, interestingly enough, Tim Walz earned the award as the, quote, Top Gun Democrat Award. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was earned the Top Gun Democrat Award at the annual Congressional Clay Shooting Competition held by the bipartisan Congressional Sportsman Caucus, of which he is the co-chair. Why do I think this is interesting? Well, I saw a soundbite from Vice President Harris who said, if Congress doesn't act, I'm going to sign an executive order stopping importation of all, quote, assault weapons, end quote. And then she went on. The clip kind of cut off, so I don't know what she said after that, but she started to talk about the thousands of assault weapons that are on our streets. So, back to Governor Walz. So, he is a gun guy. He's the most liberal choice among the top candidates for running mate, and he has a left-leaning record since being elected the governor of Minnesota in 2018. He supported universal free school meals for students. I like that. Signed a law that made abortion a fundamental right. I'm not going to opine on that. You can opine on that if you want. And passed paid family and medical leave and paid sick leave and transgender rights protections. This kind of tells me he's an independent thinker. He's left on some things and right on others. His tenure in the House from 2007 to 2019 showed a complex politician who represented a Republican-leaning district while maintaining core Democratic positions, including support for abortion rights and same-sex marriage. The NRA gave him an A rating to go along with his centrist voting record and reputation among voters and in Washington for being focused on some of the least partisan topics, including veterans issues and agriculture policy. This is going to be quite interesting. He was running in a district that had one Democrat since 1892, said at his first rally with Harris on Tuesday, a couple hours after she announced that he was a running mate. I learned the art of compromise without compromising my values, he's quoted as saying. As Minnesota's chief executive, Walz has governed more to the left than some might have expected, while maintaining his heartland bona fides. One weekend a few weeks ago, he went turkey hunting with Representative Angie Craig, who's a Democrat from Minnesota, and then attended what Craig described as a gay rights dinner with her, she recalled Tuesday evening. I just find this fascinating. You've got a guy who is gets an A rating from the NRA facing against Harris. I don't know what Harris's rating with the NRA is, but I guarantee you it's not an A. So as we delve into the background and the views of the vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, I'm wondering where he stands on Israel, Gaza, and pro-Palestinian protests. Well, I did hear a pundit say, well, that was to secure the Muslim vote. I don't know if that's true or not, but because Walz has been a long supporter of Israel, When he served in the House, he frequently did pro-Israel votes, including a vote to condemn the UN resolution affirming that Israel's settlements in the West Bank are illegal. 108 other House Democrats voted for it, while 76 voted against it. And he has met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which is great because there were a ton of Democrats who boycotted him when he spoke at Congress, which is completely disrespectful to do that for an ally and a leader of a nation. Forget what's going on. It was disrespectful. So I find this very interesting. I'll be looking forward to some of the debates when they occur, both with President Trump and Vice President Harris, as well as the vice presidential candidates. It's going to be an interesting election season. So I took a break from recording because it really didn't sit well with me that Harris's vice president pick received an A rating from the NRA. So I did a little bit of digging because it didn't sit well with me. And I came across an article from the New York Times. I know, it's the New York Times. So this Minnesota governor, he is basically pushing for, or after a 2018 mass shooting, has pushed for gun reforms. So basically, early in his career, Tim Walz represented a largely rural district, and rural areas are closely associated with firearms. So there was a group that the NRA endorsed him. They donated, and in 2016, Guns and Ammo magazine basically included him on the top 20 list of politicians for gun owners. Mr. Walz, after all, was an Army veteran. I don't think he was in the Army, according to this article, and rare gun-owning Democrat who spoke of his love for hunting. All right, I've been around the block a couple times. I don't know who wrote this article, but seriously, there was a ton of Democrats that own firearms. There, with 120 firearms for every 100 people, statistically, Democrats own firearms. So to say that it's rare for a Democrat to own a firearm is one of the reasons why the New York Times has the reputation that it has. So during his first campaign for governor in 2018, Walz began supporting some tighter firearms restrictions. And it was basically after the Stoneman Douglas shooting in a Florida high school in 2018. So at the time, he's basically said he's uniquely suited to sell gun rights supporters on more restrictive measures. And he was downgraded by the NRA to an F rating at that point. As the governor, he signed into law a handful of gun control measures, including one that went into effect last week, increasing penalties for acquiring a weapon on behalf of someone who is not eligible to own a firearm. That would be a straw purchase. I'm actually okay with that. In 2023, Walz signed legislation giving law enforcement officials broader tools to remove weapons from people who are deemed to pose a risk to themselves or others. This law also expanded background checks for weapons sales. He's saying, as a veteran, as a gun owner, as a hunter and a dad, I know basic gun safety isn't a threat to the Second Amendment. It's about keeping kids safe. So the NRA criticized the new measures, saying they were unfairly criminalized certain gun transactions and deprived people of due process and their Second Amendment rights, which is the whole argument against the red flag laws. I believe I've mentioned in other episodes that I've asked attorneys, have there been abuses of red flag laws? And the answer has been no. But there have been some abuses of a clear and present danger report, which is what law enforcement can submit if they deem someone is a danger to themselves. Unfortunately, law enforcement, in some cases, they fill out this report when they get an uncooperative subject, like, why am I being arrested? Well, hey, you're not cooperating, therefore, you're going to get a clear and present danger report. So, With that said, I continued to do a little bit of digging. I actually went to the NRA website because I wanted to see what the NRA had to say about them, not the New York Times. And the NRA does have a statement on the vice president pick. Following Kamala Harris's selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Democrat, as her running mate, Randy Kozich, chairman of the NRA Political Victory Fund, that is NRA-PVF, released the following statement. It's brief. Tim Walz is a political chameleon, changing his positions to further his own personal agenda. In Congress, Walz purported to be a friend of gun owners to receive their support in his rural Minnesota district. Once he had his eyes set on other offices, he sold out law-abiding Minnesotans and promoted a radical gun control agenda that emboldened criminals and left everyday citizens defenseless. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz cannot be trusted to defend freedom and our constitutional rights. Okay, so let's look at this from the flip side. I've had a ton of anti-gun people, a ton of people that have never, ever, ever seen a firearm, thought they were going to see a firearm, never touched a firearm, and they were lifelong, I don't want to say Democrats, but more liberal leaning. Hey, I just don't need a firearm. And again, firearms are not for everyone. I've had a plethora of these people come through my classes, particularly since the Hamas attack on Israel. We've got a ton of all sorts of people that are saying, maybe gun rights, maybe I do need a gun. The world is going crazy. And with that said, that's the flip side to this. He was a gun owner, or is a gun owner, who flipped and now is implementing laws that will increase safety in the home, increase penalties for criminals. I don't know why the NRA is criticizing this, because the NRA has said in the past that they want deeper penalties for criminals. And if there's deeper penalties for straw purchases, and let me explain what a straw purchase is. It is when an individual goes into a gun store because they're in a gang or they want to buy someone a gun, and that person is disqualified for whatever reason, drug use, criminal activity, felonies, hospitalization in a psychiatric ward or for a psychiatric reason in the past 5 years, but the person wants to be nice and they buy that other person a firearm. That other person should not have a firearm. There are stiffer penalties in Minnesota when someone does that. I am okay with that. We should not have firearms in the hands of people who are not in the right mind space to handle or own firearms. And let me give you an example. Hey, we're all human. We're all in a multitude of mind spaces every day. Last summer, there was a time, it was a Saturday, I was going to go in my garage and I was going to do some maintenance on some firearms, and something in the house upset me. I have no idea. I don't remember what it was, but I said to myself, today is not a good day for me to clean firearms. So I didn't. I waited till the next day, and then I cleaned all my firearms. It was a Sunday. Similarly, when I worked at a shooting range, I worked most days, it was a 12-hour shift. It was 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I was on, at least at first, 12 one-hour lessons per shift. I was on 12 one-hour lessons per shift. No time for lunch, no time to go to the bathroom. That is how hard I was worked. And in between, if someone didn't show up, I'm schlepping ammo from the back to the front, or I'm doing heavy lifting. It was a very physical job. And I realized I didn't make these mistakes, but other people did. I said, you know something? And I talked to the owner about this. After the 8th hour, I do not want to be teaching because I'm tired and I don't want to make a mistake. And let me tell you one of the mistakes that was made by a coworker. The coworker rented out a gun. This has happened over and over. They would either go in for a lesson, they'd rent out a 40 caliber gun, and because they're rushing, they gave the person 9mm bullets. Well, a 9mm will fire in a 40. I've seen it happen. However, the mainspring is too strong for the cycle or for the slide to completely cycle. So the first shot goes off, but then the gun jams over and over again. And then they come back and they've got a less than full box of ammo that we can't resell. So I didn't want to make those types of mistakes. I didn't want to. Another mistake I saw is somebody shooting a revolver from the rental case. It's not checked. It's put back in the case with shell casings in it, sometimes with live ammunition in it. Again, these are mistakes I do not want to make. And that's why I said, fatigue alters mental state as well. So I requested, and most of the time it was accommodated, but there were some times where, oh no, hour 10, Marcus is going to do it. And I'd be like, give it to someone else. Just because safety is paramount. There's no such thing as I am sorry in a self-defense incident. I'm sorry, let me say that again. There is no such thing as I am sorry in shooting sports. My father always told me, dead is dead. Injured is injured. You can't take back a bullet. Another expression I've heard is every projectile has an attorney's name etched into it. And we're liable for these things. And I do not want to be responsible because I'm in an altered mental state. That doesn't mean I have an altered mental state all the time, but I'm human. I get upset. I get super happy. Hey, my son's going to college, which we're going to talk about in the second half. And I'm super happy with him. But I'm also an emotional wreck because he's going away to college. So with that said, we're going to be talking about some college safety tips for those who are going away to dorm rooms or apartments in cities that they don't normally live in. So stay tuned.
The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.